Well, it's nice to have wishes. I just saw the outline of that and I actually like it. I always hate it when people give me like, Chris, where's your talk outline and where's your heading? And I just come up with random stuff because I always write my slides on the way here because I think about what the audience might be like, what you want to hear, and what new things just happen. So I always put new things in there. Otherwise I would bore myself and I don't know what I'm saying on stage anyways. So I thought I put the contentiousness a bit of like up to 11 by giving it a title like The Paradox of Choice and Insight, because that could be anything. I always love these titles, like, yay. And 2 weeks ago, my parents had their 50th wedding anniversary. So I was looking forward to going to Germany and basically be the driver for them and bring them to a restaurant, and looking forward to going on the Autobahn again, you know, because I don't have a car in England. There's no point in having a car in London, and driving in California is just teasing cars because you cannot let them run. It's like having a husky and just keeping it in your house or something like that. So as a rental car to impress my parents, I got this Mercedes E-Class. And funny enough, for £5 for 3 days. I don't know what happened there, but I'm like, yay. And then I got into this thing and I'm like, oh, 230, 235. This is really cool. But before I even went in there, I got this display that said, check the tire pressures, then restart run flat indicator. You know, as a rental car, I looked around it if there's any dents or anything, or if there's a tire missing or whatever, and there was no tire was flat. They were all okay. So I get this message in the middle where I expect other things, and I don't know what to do with that. And of course, I went for the manual. And this is the succinct, small German manual, only in German, no other language in there. And then I thought, nah, that's stupid. The tire isn't flat, I don't care. But maybe it's in the second manual that they gave me for the other things that are in there. Like, you never know, like maybe there's something in there. And I looked around more and I'm like, oh cool, this is now, it has a GPS in there. I don't have to get my phone out and run out of battery and do all kind of things and get the 20 megabyte traffic that I have in Germany gone in 20 seconds. And I'm like, this is cool. And they put all the things in the steering wheel as well. So you got all these buttons in there that do all kind of stuff, except none of them did anything with the navigation system. So I went back to the navigation system and started touching it. Nah, doesn't do anything either. I found the button to change the navigation system where I would expect the handbrake, down here. Because the handbrake obviously is down here to the left, where I normally have the thing to pop the hood. So it seemed to me like they had this car and then there was new inventions all the time and they just put them randomly in there and then wrote a longer manual to actually explain to people where these things might be. It reminded me of these Japanese toilets that you have in Japan, and funnily enough also in the lounge in Frankfurt Airport, which have these 15 buttons and different things that they do to you or with the things that you gave the toilet. And I feel kind of like bizarre that way, because I'm like, I know how to use a toilet and what to do afterwards. It's a simple thing, although funny enough in offices you have to explain it to people a lot of times. But then I see this and I'm either like, am I too stupid to use this one? Will I make a fool out of myself and have to call somebody in to help me or something like that? Or I'm more of the geek and I'm like, so many options, let's try them all out. Let's see what these things do, you know? And this is, I think, how web developers feel when they come into our market now. Because we give them all the things at the same time. There's so many things to choose from and so many things to do right, to do wrong. I mean, today we heard from him amazing information how to make a single-page application. We just saw lots of waterfall things. We learned about making websites faster and how to test if they're faster. I want to know the data. Which one of the urinals is used more? The yellow one, the red one, or the green one? But that data wasn't there, funnily enough. So we had information on demand. That was always the cool thing about the internet. That's to me the internet defined. I want to go somewhere, I want to have an answer, I want to have an answer to something, I find it on the internet. And for us it was wonderfully self-fulfilling, because as a web developer you learn everything on the web. I mean, I didn't have a school class that taught me anything about the web because the web didn't exist back then. And the things I see nowadays are not as up to date anymore either. So we all went to the web and got free education doing the web thing. Problem is when you go nowadays, as we accumulated over the last 20 years, lots and lots of information, how do you find the right one? And there I found that we're stepping over ourselves a bit. First of all, we have immense insight. Browser developer tools nowadays, oh my God, I would have loved to have those back in the days when an alert was all I had. And, oh, the browser crashed, probably something was wrong. And that was all I had. And nowadays you have insight into you have a debugger in there, a step-by-step debugger, style editors, profilers, memory consumption. You can connect the phone to it and edit things live on the phone and tap on the phone and highlights in the syntax highlighter. We got full insight into everything. So it's not like now, back in the days when you're like, well, you did it wrong. Nowadays, no, you did it wrong and this happened and that happened. Here's your memory leaking. Here's your JavaScript being called 15 times, although it should be called once, and so on and so forth. We have full insight. And a lot of them are very visual nowadays as well. You don't even need to go for the numbers. This is Firefox developer tools right now. If you have a CSS animation, you can change the Bezier curve live. You just click on it and the numbers get generated for you. You press Command S and you save it back to your CSS file. So you don't even need to be a programmer or know the math about Bezier curves to understand how that animation would work. You also see the beginning and the end of the transformation in a displayed fashion. So if I click on this one now, I can change the colors. That's another thing that changed in every developer tool. I don't need to know what FF3366 means anymore, although I know it in my head, but you don't need to accumulate that knowledge any longer. And here's the transformation thing that shows me what the transformations looks at the beginning and at the end, in case you do transformations and you wonder why they strangely end up in a place where they're not any longer. We have all these tools, and we can use them, and we do use them. We also have tools to share with each other. We've got GitHub, we've got JS Fiddle, JS Bin, CodePen, Dablet. Every week there's a new one, more or less. But all of those things allow me to help somebody when they have a question online. Instead of just mansplaining something to them or giving them like, oh, you gotta read the W3C, things like that. Just show me your code, I help you out a bit, I fork it, I do something with it, send it back to you, and we're fine. Or even better, we have collaborative education. So this is Together.js, which is just a JavaScript that you can put in your page. And once you have that, you have a WebRTC client in there that allows you to have an audio chat, a text chat, and user focus that you share with the other user. So this is in Thimble right now, where you see two users together coding HTML. Each of them has their own cursor, and they have a text chat going with each other and code together on the same document. You can also do this just as an audio chat, and then you don't have the text chat. This is this example where we just have a canvas animation and two people are chatting over audio with each other and have these two cursors, so you see where the problems are. I use this for interviews, because I can see then what you're doing and not that you're just copying and pasting from Stack Overflow and call yourself a developer. I call them the full stack Overflow developers instead of full stack developers. They just copy and paste things like, I've done this, we're done. And this is amazing if you think about it. Like, we have the power to teach anybody on the web live right now without having to install anything. And it's just the beginning. In the next Firefox version, we will have something in there that's a WebRTC client that will allow you to put a button in your page and do that, so you don't even need the JavaScript any longer. But this works for all browsers. We've become self-entertaining though, like when you put a laser pointer on the cat and see it running around for a few hours. Because we come up with problems to solve and solutions to solve. Instead of looking at problems and fixing them and finding the standard solutions for them, we build a library. We build a framework, we build a polyfill. We do something that impresses other people by solving the problem. And we try to sell it to each other for no money at all. We're the worst salespeople in the world. We spend our time on it, and then we basically, oh, well, next week, well, you still use that one? Nah. We had this beforehand with like gulp, grunt, burp, farp, whatever. And you get always these people that come up like, oh, I like Thing, so you should do it in Thing. I find people taking my old demos and rewriting them in other languages right now because it's obviously better, although it's the same language or the same solution. So when people on Stack Overflow ask things and they're like, no, you should use grunt for that. No, actually use gulp for that. I use PHP. Hey, I like that. No, you do it in Ruby. Like, yes, I'm happy that you love the language that you work with, but don't force feed it to other people the whole time. Make sure that people can make their own choices, or maybe they're sitting behind a firewall in an office where they're not allowed to use any Ruby. We also have the people that just say, oh, yeah, that's easy. Just use that thing with that thing and that thing. Go to your command line, do npm install this, and it's these 60,000 things. They're all safe. Don't worry about them. They're fine. And then you have a fast solution. And we put abstraction on abstraction on abstraction, and we expect all of them to make the end thing better rather than one of them breaking in between. Like, which of those adapters would have a data loss right now? You wouldn't know. Which ones of these 10 abstractions that you use up memory out of a sudden, and you don't know why? So we make it easier just by abstracting, but we're actually putting more complexity into it because people have to understand these abstractions. And you have to teach them these abstractions as well. And when you're in an environment where the company is not too happy about things, you go to your boss and it's like, yeah, there's this thing that does this really well. It's a beta. Okay, like what happens if it breaks? Breaks? You know, okay, can we call somebody? No. Okay, we're not going to use it. Sadly enough, we have bosses like that. Sometimes well enough, because some things break. And perpetual alpha and beta, I'm tired of this. Maybe we should stop pretending that we're inventing things all the time and fix some of the old ones and make them better. The other thing I find is that the polyfills, like you don't use that polyfill, then you can use it immediately. You have your science and engineering. Engineers find something to fix that thing and we're done. Polyfills are great. They're basically, the idea of a polyfill is that we can build the interfaces that need certain functionality. And we have these interfaces now. The problem that we have with polyfills is that they delay the implementation of the thing that we polyfill. Because if everybody is relying on the polyfill and nobody actually gives feedback on the implementation of the technology in the browser, in the network stack, or wherever it needs to be going, then they will not be implemented by browser makers. Browser makers are busy people as well. We need you to complain all the single time that you need these things and not use a polyfill so you don't need it any longer. So we put another thing in the stack, another thing in the solution rather than making the browser better. And of course, the bigger problem with that is as well if the polyfill does it differently and the standard changes under it then. And you're like, okay, no, now we use the polyfill. jQuery is a great example. Everybody knows jQuery, and the DOM was considered a mess, and it is a mess, or it was a mess back then. And now everybody starts with jQuery, and people don't even understand what the DOM is any longer. And that's when single-page applications become really slow, because people just read and write as much as they want, because they don't even know what they're doing under the hood any longer. So a polyfill, to me, is one of those things where we're like, we do it now because we want it, rather than we let it understand, we let it grow, and we make it better by implementing it and maybe breaking things. That's fine from time to time. Silently falling, I think, is the worst thing we can do, because I like when errors happen, because then I can fix things. The other thing we have is spotlight testing and projection. That's these guys on that basically like go to JSPerf and say like, okay, if I create 50,000 objects that I shift twice to this array, then your loop is slower than mine. Good. Well, I hope somebody pays you for that, and I hope some client will ever need this problem. Then we have no issue with that. This was Adi Osmani the other day, where he showed about the new in DevTools audits in the Chrome tools. And it says, okay, this page now shows me that 150K could be saved by changing this CSS file because so and so many selectors of the CSS file are not used in this page, which is a totally valid point. And his original point was that people shouldn't use CSS frameworks for everything, which I agree with. But this page is the problem that I have with that. This is Macy's.com. Macy's.com is not a single page application. This has lots and lots of pages with lots and lots of different images, lots and lots of different colors, lots and lots of different layouts. This is a massive e-commerce website, and I build e-toys, and I work with Amazon, and know how complex these things are. So saying you could save 150K from one CSS file by just testing the front page means you would have to load 150K somewhere else in a different part of the page later on. Why not have all your look and feel in one CSS, which was the idea of CSS, and maybe swallow those 150K or take a few things out that make sense? we abstract a lot of information out of a spotlight test, and that is dangerous. I'm not saying that Adi Osmani did this, he knows what he was doing, but a lot of people were retweeting this and saw it as gospel, and said like, oh, they could save 150K. Well, maybe they should not have like their images as BMPs or like 90% JPEGs, then they could save even more. So testing and results always have to be seen in context, and the context goes away when you have 140 characters or you want to win an argument on Stack Overflow. So make sure that we actually know what we're doing when we're testing. And correlation and causalization is always the issue. Like, this one shows that the murder rate in the US has gone down since the Internet Explorer market share has gone down. It's got numbers, it has graphs, and it's colorful, so it must be true. That you all know now. And I see this all the time, like, oh, we asked 400 people in the Silicon Valley if they're gonna buy Google Glass next week. This means that Google Glass is gonna be better seller than CDs. Or something like that. So you always see this mix-up all the time, and it just drives me crazy that these things get clicks and headlines and so on and so on. We listen to channels that actually are there to make us annoyed or to give us truth that we might be interested in and nobody else is really. So I call this the Heilmann's law of internets, which is from Star Trek, and it's the rule of acquisition 190. Hear all, trust nothing. Look around, read every day. I got about like 900 feeds every day, and that's what I tweet out every morning in case somebody follows me. This is where I get my information from. Look at as many things as you can before you make up your mind. Don't trust any resource. Don't trust any one person. We're all making mistakes. We all have an agenda to follow. We all want to do something about it. And sometimes we overshoot the mark because we just want to be quick out there. I made a lot of mistakes that a year later became differently. I find people that find blog posts from me from 8 years ago and say like, oh, that's different now. And you're like, really? Wow, yeah, that's amazing. I didn't know that this evolution thing happens on the web. Amazing. There's a great post that I got really excited about the other day by Frederick Noren, and it's called Generalization, on generalization. And he has a point, and I find myself doing the same thing. As developers, we are pre-wired to generalize everything. We hate a little function that does only one thing and one thing well. We just, okay, I've got this kind of application right now, I write this function for it, and then I make it generalized. Then I put parameters in there, then I make it bigger, then I make it easier for people to reuse and think of all the scenarios where it might be used. And this is what his point is. Generalizing code and making it more abstracted means we're predicting. We're trying to predict a future. We're trying to predict an environment. We're trying to predict a truth that our code will be used in. And 90% of the time, we're totally wrong. So his point is it makes more sense to write code that is easy to understand and easy to extend than to write a code that covers all the bases that we came up with when we wrote the code. And I had this epiphany when I remembered writing terrible things like DHTML drop-down menus. Remember those things? Like document all, document layer, and you basically had like 50, for every company that wanted to put their company structure as their navigation rather than the things that they had on their website. And these were like sometimes like 90, 120 links, something like that. And the first feedback I got when I wrote a DHTML menu like that was like, yeah, but it can't be instantiated several times on the same page, so your code is not good enough. You're like, how many times do you want to put 190 links in your page? Some things are there to be used once and only once. And we have the same thing with OOO CSS. I love the idea, but the whole like, oh, never use an ID because everything will be used several times, not necessarily. Sometimes an ID to me is okay, especially when I use it in JavaScript, I use it in CSS, and I use it with a target selector in CSS because I can put it in the URL. It's not a bad idea to put an ID in there as well. We want to make everything very generic and very, for a future that might happen, which never happens, which is we're pre-wired like that. That's what good coding means. But we have to understand that we're putting more and more complexity into the web that way, and we don't explain it to people, like the car that I had to drive. And I caught myself the other day doing that as well. Actually, yesterday morning, no, 3 days ago when I left my house. I I had to go to the airport at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and when I do that, because I'm dizzy in the morning, I just do everything the night before that I need to do. So I just put my clothes on, maybe tie my shoelaces and go out. So I was basically going through my flat, finding all the things that I wanted to throw into the rubbish. And I made this rubbish bag, nicely separated, of course, because I'm German, although I live in England, and had all my rubbish in there. And then I had these 3 bananas next to me. And for about 10 seconds, the developer in me said, okay, you could pre-peel those bananas. Then you can take all the rubbish out today, and tomorrow morning you can eat the banana. Not quite getting immediately that a pre-peeled banana overnight is not the tastiest thing to eat in the morning. But the pre-peeling process came to me as the best algorithm ever, and the idea like I only have to go to the rubbish bin once now because this is clever. There's no reuse there. There's like, oh, it's a principle of least resistance. I like that. And then like, you're an idiot, aren't you? You know? But this is, think from time to time, stop like, I could make this generic. Do I need to? Is it really that important? Will people use my thing again? Is your jQuery plugin the one that is better than the 400 others that you find that do the same thing? Or is it just like your ego saying like, I can make this and people will use it? Maybe people never use it. If it performs well, just keep it the way it is. And education is a big thing. I mean, you hear in the press, everybody has to learn how to code. Oh, coding is the cool thing, it's amazing. It's the Prince's Trust in England, government money, my government money, spent on teaching people things. And this is the kind of education marketing that they have. Learning HTML from A to Z index. So when you teach people HTML, you shouldn't probably start with web components. And Z is a really, really strange namespace for a component. Or maybe they don't understand what HTML is, but I don't want to talk about that, and it would be evil to say. So when we think people are clever, think about it in the world that you find things like that. When I put my rubbish away, there's a collector's box where you can put all clothes in that go to charity shops, and they have to put a warning label on that, please don't climb in there. And it's not that people are stupid, people are busy, people are confused. And I get this when I go on planes. I stand there, wait for the plane like everybody else, and I talk to the person next to me, and they're like, oh, so what do you do? And I'm like, well, I'm in IT, and I talk about things. What do you do? Oh, yeah, I'm a molecular physicist. Oh, that's cool. And then you go to the plane, and that person stands next to me with their printout. Is that my seat? I'm like, well, let's see. What number does it say? Does that number correspond with this row? If not, then you're already not here. What letter does it have? Does the letter contain in the 3 letters that we have on the thing here? I find people all the time telling me that their seat is mine because they cannot read a number and a letter. And we ask people to learn how coding works. So we have to make that easier somehow. In context, we're all idiots, and I'm including myself at times as well. In my case, it's pre-peeling bananas. But numbers and letters, most of the time, I'm okay with. So why are we so busy? Why are we so excited about impressing each other with winning Hacker News with the coolest new NPM module because we want to do things? There's a few reasons. I gave a few talks about this, that our bosses don't listen to us, that they don't understand what we're doing, which gives us a lot of freedom, but at the same time, we don't feel being appreciated because they don't understand if we deliver a bad job or a good job. They just want to have it on time and on money and not breaking. Whereas we're like, okay, I want to optimize this. No, we don't have time for that. Error handling, nah, bro, not needed. I think the problem is that we got very excited about the clear separation of concerns going away. When I started as a web developer, we had hardware, PC, netbook, laptop, whatever else you had there, framework computer, like big things. Then we had the software, the operating system, desktop programs, services, data services, these kind of things. Then we had the browser, and that was the gateway to the internet. Firefox or other browsers, I'm happy with you using them, really, but fair enough. And then we had the internets, data services, websites, music, movies, kittens, all the things that you needed to have. And then the form factor changed. All of this was interchangeable. That was what the internet to me is as a definition. I don't need to know what computer you use. I don't need to know what operating system you use. You probably cannot change it because I want my pixels to be perfect. You have the right to use whatever you want as long as that thing understands HTTP and does something with HTML to it that might be just using a regex to get the text out. I have no right to tell you you have to change your environment. That is what the internet was about and is about and will always be about. Unless we're going into the mobile market where out of a sudden everything became the same thing. Like, oh, the hardware is mixed with the operating system. The operating system has a browser, which is just an app that nobody wants to use. And the browser is an engine that I don't know because, oh no, you can't upgrade the browser because that's hardwired with the operating system of this version and that browser and that operating system. And I was just like, really? We gave away all that freedom that we have with the internet for a thing in our pockets? And we did. And apps were better than the web. Like, that's the cool new thing. The press didn't talk about www, la 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 something anymore. They just said, apps are the thing. There's an app for that. Please download my app after you just downloaded the whole content of the website, so have an interstitial in front of you because you want to download 15 meg instead of leading 140K of text or something like that. And we got confused. We were like, okay, apps, apps, apps. We want to do apps. We need to do apps right now. So we started doing apps using HTML5. And that's the kind of app that you see. That's the Frankfurt Airport app on my Android device. So I loaded it, and it has broken images that load bit by bit because they were really, really slow. And then it loaded even more, and then I had the functionality of a sudden, and then I clicked through it, and I've got the back button up there, and I have my back button on my Android device, the one that I'm used to. The back button on the Android device gave me the last website, not going back in that application. The button up there and the rest of the interface looks like my phone is an iPhone 1. It is not. It is a Nexus 5. But the apps frameworks that we built were all about the iPhone is the end of the internet. This is the best thing ever. Never gonna, is this thing gonna change? And this is the kind of apps that we build, and they're just, you know, they're slightly there. They're almost an app, and we almost go like, we're getting it. We're gonna go there. Like, it's offline functionality is working. It's loading almost. The data is there, and we have it. And all of these apps promise our users something that they don't have, which is being native apps. Because the app platforms, almost all of them, don't give the web the same power that they give the native applications. So what do? We come up with cool stuff. Web components, I'm super excited about it. It's the future of what we want to do. We finally have real widgets, real components on the web that render independent of each other. They're actually rendered by the browser in the flow of the browser, picturing rather than imaging, rather than just working against it. All the DOM components we were there. So this is Phil Ledger's article about web components. And if you want to read about them, that's a very, very simple task. It's taken a bit of time. If you want to have more information, which framework to use, you might use that one or that one. That's the browser compatibility. Maybe you want to go for that framework. Maybe you want to go for that one. It reminded me of the instruction booklet of the car, you know? We have, instead of getting web components to work, which is of course a hard task, but the browser makers are on board, we want to do this, we have 15 libraries that do it now for us already, because you can make this work right now, which would be good if those things weren't polyfilling on old browsers in a really, really slow fashion, which gives web components a bad reputation again. If I'm going on an IE9 to a website that's built with web components and everything gets rendered through massive DOM components for me again, I thought this was faster. This is actually slower than it was before. Okay, let's go to W3C and ask them about applications, what kind of standards and what kind of implementations in different browsers we have. Okay, diagram, fair enough. Implementation guide explaining how far they're going. And yeah, let's read this and maybe read that and go for that one again. Okay, this is the 20th of the page right now. It basically goes all the way down. You can read, you can scroll for like 15 seconds or something like that just by scrolling through it, which is good. Information is good, but this is not when I'm a new developer and I get this as an answer from a standard guide like me. Oh, here's a great overview. They're gonna be shocked and they're not gonna come back. They're like, no, I'm not gonna read this. I wanna read Harry Potter instead. It's shorter. So the problem is that we try to make these apps things work on the web, and at the same time, apps are already crashing all the way around us. And I love this because I predicted it. And people are like, yeah, no, come on, apps are the coolest thing ever. I gave a TED talk about this where I explained that apps are just a scam to make software consumable. The web was software on demand. Oh, I want to have an email client. How about I go to this website? It's my email client. I want to read some RSS. I do this. I want to write a text. I do this. And the new version of that one, great. It automatically comes next time I load it. There's a new feature. Amazing. And then out of a sudden, I get this feature of like, here's an app. It's beautiful. Oh, you want the new feature? No, you have to pay for that and re-download the 50 megs. It's like the scratchability of CDs, so you can resell the same thing 15 times. We did with packaging apps up as well. And you see this now, because this is the ComScore report from last month, where they asked people how many apps they download per month, and 65% said 0. And there's a few reasons for that. The main reason is that the apps that come with the operating system are the ones that are actually the interesting ones. I use my maps all the time. I have an email client from the operating system already. I have a social network normally connected to it as well. I can listen to my audio, I can watch my videos. All of these things already come. Why should I download another app? And if you look at the apps that I use the most, it's Facebook, YouTube, Google Play, Google Search, Pandora, Google Maps, and so on and so forth. None of those are these cool things that we get really excited about, that these apps that break the mold and like use the platform the best way because HTML5 could never do it like that native app does. It showed that data wins out at the end. The biggest app provider on Android is Google. And that's clever if you think about it, you know? Android is not interesting to me because of the platform or because of the code. It's interesting to me because of all the cool services that Google gives me with that operating system. Input type speech, awesome. Why doesn't Firefox have it? Because we don't have the server farm of Google to change audio into text. Offline, input type speech doesn't work. How is that innovation? I'm offline all the time. So data is the one that you have to think about. So if you want to make an application that is a success, think about building a business. Then think about building your application. Think about the data that goes in and out of your application and what you do with it. And maybe how you protect it for your end users. Then it becomes interesting in the app market. Otherwise, you will have to battle Facebook, you will have to battle Google, and good luck with that. Native developers always come up to me like, how can you work as a web developer? There's so many browsers out there, so many configurations, so many different operating systems, some of them still in use, some of them not so much. The web is a fragmented mess. I don't want to test on lots of browsers and different platforms, which is annoying. I would love to have Internet Explorer for my Mac. I really would. I don't want to have another Parallels running in another virtual machine or a service. It would be fun to be able to do that. But if you look at the numbers on Android again, it's amazing. The OpenSignal people tested 628,000 devices. Have a guess how many different devices they found. These were the devices that they found, all of them. And what I found interesting is that Nexus is this little gray one here, and Galaxy S3 is about 10 times bigger than that one. And we always think that the Google hardware is the one where most of the users will have. Like, no, they have the outdated Samsung one from the last update of Android instead. So in all, it was like 19,000 or something like that. It was nuts, and it's going more and more, because, I mean, hardware gets created, they put a browser on it, hardwire it to the version of the hardware, and give it out to people. So nobody can tell me that native development is not fragmented or as hard as web development. To me, it's the same thing. I don't want to support dozens of screen sizes. How can we, terrible that our end users can change the font size and change the browser, right? That's terrible. These are the font size, these are the screen sizes of iOS and of Android. And that's just the start. Wearables, watches, headsets, all kind of things. There's lots of devices coming that will have internet connectivity and data, but no screen whatsoever, which is kind of tricky for us if we're into HTML and CSS. But, well, HTML is fine, but CSS not so much. So what do we do? How do we deal with this? And The good news is we already dealt with that. As web developers, we never had it differently. We lied to ourselves every single time when we said all of our users are in a good connection with the latest browser. These things with latest Firefox and latest Chrome on it, 10% of the market, tops. Go to offices, go to like libraries and see what people are using and cry a bit and go home and have an ice cream to feel better or something like that. Because people are not as excited as we are about upgrading their software and buying new hardware all the time. They just use the thing that works. And we are already okay with that. We've given up on saying I can change the font size for the user and pixel perfection is just what our bosses want from us, but we know it's a stupid idea and it's not gonna work anytime. And on native, we still had that idea. Like, oh yeah, this always work. I loved it when the iPad mini came out that had like the same resolution as the iPad, but was like 2 centimeters smaller or something like that, and all the pixel perfect layouts broke. Like, yeah, don't do that. There's always scroll bars or all kind of things going on. Always give it a bit of leeway. Take whatever you have. The other day I was in America and I paid and they didn't give me a pencil, but my friend was there with his kid and had crayons, so I just filled out the form with crayon. Why not? Use the technologies that we have, CSS, HTML, JavaScript. Make them better. Help us make the platform better and stop abstracting and thinking you can change the thing and make it better by putting something out there that is a JavaScript that you have to put into the page, that adds to the load of the page, that adds to the rendering of the browser. We're fighting the browser for performance as web developers the whole time. The more we put in the middle there, the more this fight is gonna harder for us. But it could be also much better, right? Like, as a kid, you don't understand. I need light-up shoes so I can run faster. There's always these Stack Overflow guys that are like, why isn't Python in the browser? Why can't I use Ruby and CSS or whatever people want to have? You know, people always like, why JavaScript is such a terrible language? Oh my God, we have to replace it with something new. Good luck. You know, like you saw how many devices are out there, which browsers are not upgradable. Try to get them all out there. There's a great post. The slides are up as well, if you want to see that later. Hating JavaScript is like, ugh. Yeah. Hating JavaScript is like hating the internet. The internet is a cobweb of different technologies cobbled together with duct tape, string, and chewing gum. It's not elegantly designed in any way because it's more of a growing organism than it's a machine constructed with intent. And I can safely say after 18 years of web development, that is 100% true. There's like nothing there that you could predict is gonna happen in the next year. Just flow with it and enjoy the moment. Just like get a hole into a Zen moment of like, okay, my stuff works for today, yay. Let's have a drink. You know, and that's a guy from Spotify. It was really, really interesting to talk to him about this. And the web is the thing that's built to last. Everything else I've seen come and go. I remember when Flash guys came up to me and said like, oh yeah, well, everything is Flash now, the HTML, JavaScript stuff will never work. I remember when, I know, Linden Labs with like, what was it, like the Second Life? Oh, that's the new internet. The old internet will not be used any longer. Yay, fair enough, go for it, dude. If you build a web app today, it will run in browsers in 10 years from now. Good luck trying the same with your favorite mobile OS, excluding Firefox OS from Paul Backhaus from Google. I didn't say it, he did. But he's totally right. And there was a proof the other day, which was the first Microsoft ever website 20 years ago. This is what it looked like, so Microsoft was always good about design. And I wrote a longer blog post about this, what this page can teach us, and a lot of things. The thing is, they still work. The code hasn't changed in 20 years, it works. It showed that we didn't understand the web back then because these underlined links are images. So it's really not a maintainable website. They have to create a new image every single time, but they still made it underlined because people didn't know what links were back then. And then we removed the links because CSS was awesome. But it shows that this thing is still there, is still consumable. Your React.js, gulp, brand, blah, blah, blah thing of today, if in half a year's time it doesn't load anymore because it assumes a browser to do something and there was no proper checking anymore, then we're not moving ahead. I think we're moving back. We're moving back into burning things on CD and expecting a user to have some certain computer. And that's just sad because the internet is better than that, I think. Think it, build it, ship it, tweak it. That's in the Spotify office in Stockholm as well, and I love that, because why not? We have to tweak our stuff all the time as well. That's why we came up with Agile methodologies. There's no thing like, oh, it's ready now, don't have to change it ever anymore. No, your end users want new things. Your end users might, out of a sudden, you get like a new market in the Middle East, and you have to change from right to left, and these kind of things. Think about it, ship it, do something with it. Don't try to make the best thing and abstract into a world where everything works out. Do it. I mean, Facebook called it like move fast and break things. They did that a lot. And that's okay to a degree. But I think as a developer, just have fun from time to time and don't get frustrated if you're not as clever as those people that are winning on Stack Overflow with their cool frameworks and things. Little things, just play with things that you haven't done yet before and do something new and cool with it. Apps are just a form factor. There might be a new form factor soon. There might be something different. Technically, I think apps should upgrade atomically rather than like having to download the whole thing and install it again. This is going back in time to me. And everything else is what we're doing. Offline first, to me, is the only thing that both native and web have to understand is our highest priority. We heard it from her earlier. You're always offline. You're always on a flaky connection, and you're never on a known offline connection. It pretends to be online, but then you have to go through a proxy to log in, or it goes down and up again all the time. There's a great talk by Alex Feierke here called Offline First. Look at that talk. It's just beautifully done and well explained, and a service worker is going to be the big thing that we have to get out in all the browsers to make that work. Enabling more makers. Why do we still go back to people having to code? They have to understand code, but they don't have to code. Nobody's going to write the next Facebook tomorrow. This is App Maker from Mozilla, where I can drag and drop an HTML5 application together, press a button, send it out on Firefox OS devices, Android devices, Windows devices, whatever you want to do with it. What you see is what you get is not a dirty word. It used to be. I think we're at a stage where the platform is good enough to think about that again. And Google thinks about it as well, because they've got this Polymer tool as well, where you can click together your Polymer interfaces and widgets and then get the code from it. And sometimes just have fun. This is what I did on the plane the other day. It was quite fun when he talked about thumbnails. Just thinking about what you can do with a browser nowadays. Let's see that quickly. I needed thumbnails, and I used to have like AC/DC and all kind of tools to do that for me. And now I just wrote a bit of JavaScript that allows me to take thumbnails from my hard drive, drag it in there, create it, have an error, awesome. Get the images in there, drag them in there, automatically zip them up, and get a thumbnails.zip file there. I can change the settings of the thumbnail as well. When I say like, okay, the quality should be less than that, make it like really pixely. I can do the 250 pixels instead of 200. I can change the background color and all these things. And none of this is basically a library. This is plain vanilla JavaScript and HTML5, and the browser does these things for us nowadays. I didn't use any library except for the JS zip thing, which actually allows me to create zip files on the fly. So I can now look at these thumbnails here as well and check them one by one with the new settings instead of having just one big zip file. I didn't need this really, but I just thought, is it possible in the browser nowadays? Because another problem that I see with our documentation and with our blogging and what we have out there is a lot of times we have a new innovation and the first blog post is, this is not ready yet and this will never work. And we believe that, and then we never go back to it. And we just never use the technology, we just use the abstraction. Great example, App Cache. App Cache for offline functionality of HTML5. Big article by Jake Archibald, App Cache is a douchebag, explaining how it's broken and what's going on. And now that we have Service Worker, we are trying to replace App Cache. And we talked with Google at Google I/O, and we both realized that the use of App Cache of the whole users of Firefox and Chrome together, 0.02% of the websites out there have an app cache. So there were about 400 blog posts how app cache is broken, but nobody ever used it. It was just repeating the same mistakes over and over again, the same, oh no, we can't use it because that's broken and that's broken, but never really tested in a real product. So go out, play, be bold and do things, and don't try to abstract into the perfection all the time. Just have fun being a web developer. I loved the first time I wrote an HTML page, double-clicked on the index.html and saw it opening in the browser without having to go through an assembling system, putting it to a server somewhere. It's immediate response for us as developers. Play with whatever you find out there. Don't try to make it perfect. And mix and match. Use what you have. If you want to do a native app and that's the thing to do, fair enough. Just don't say it's better than HTML5 because you don't want to do HTML5. If you do HTML5, don't say that you're better than native because you cannot compare the two. It doesn't make any sense to always fight each other on these things. Just build things for our users to make their lives easier and get them the information that they want in the format that they need. And that is beautiful. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks.